Hello and welcome to this latest edition of Bulls on Parade Talk. I am your host, Joshua Sines, and we just ended another NFL season with the Seattle Seahawks defeating the Denver Broncos. It was not the game I certainly expected, and you can catch all of that analysis pregame and postgame on my channel. That is something that is not a part of this series. It was just two separate videos I decided to do, just to give my take as a football analyst. So, now that the NFL season is over, we have to look forward to, off season, what's going to happen with coaching staff, even though most of our positions are pretty much filled. And, we have to deal with free agents, if we're going to re-sign some people, if we're going to let some people go. Who are we letting go? Who are we going to bring on? And also we got to try and make some cap room so that we can at least bring in our rookies in, because they got to get paid too. And speaking of rookies coming in, as I was going through some details about this year's draft class, specifically the quarterbacks. I'm on record saying that the Texans should take Jadeveon Clowney number 1 overall if I still had the pick. But this is something that I don't think I've ever said on this show, at least, is that if I did have a choice, if I was left with no alternative but to take a quarterback, number 1 overall, I personally picked Teddy Bridgewater. I've been a fan of Teddy Bridgewater since early junior year. I'm sorry, early sophomore year, not junior year. Because I watched him. I started watching him before the Big East became the AAC, which is where the University of Houston resides now, which is why I'm very familiar with that conference. But a lot of people are hyping, Johnny Manziel, Blake Bortles is coming off as a possibility for the Texans to take because Bill O'Brien is the most familiar with him. Also, a lot of things have been said positively about Derek Carr, especially after what he showed in the Senior Bowl. But, just going through some different things, I stumbled upon an article that was written in early January 9th, by a guy by the name of, let me see if I can pull it up really quick. This guy named Greg Pesek that writes for rotoworld.com. And I'll post a link in the description of the YouTube video if y'all are watching on YouTube, and in the description of the episode on the podcast for those of you that are listening on the podcast. And that link will be in the description as well. This guy in early January did very interesting analysis of 4 of the top quarterbacks. 4 of the quarterbacks, not top. 4 quarterbacks in this class. And, his analysis was very, very interesting. He analyzed quite a bit of things. And the 4 that he analyzed were Teddy Bridgewater, Derek Carr, Johnny Manziel, and Blake Bortles. Basically the 4, I would say, top guys that people are talking about, specifically for the Texans. Pretty much everyone around Texans Nation that I've at least listened to and have heard are basically saying something about one of these 4 in terms of taking a quarterback. Okay. So this guy in this article did a very interesting analysis. He basically broke it down into 4 sections. and I'll go through each of them right now. The first section he covered is where they threw the football. You know, basically what area of the field they threw the ball in. And here's a, and this is a, for those of you that are watching this video, I'll show this on the screen right now. And for those that are listening, I'll just point it out like I always do. So basically, here they are. If you look at the way that this guy, at this table, based on the analysis that this man is giving, you know, a lot of the throws, Teddy Bridgewater, in his time, threw a lot of short passes. Derek Carr, in that Fresno State offense, threw a lot of screens. Blake Bortles, that pro style, that offense that UCF ran that had a lot of pro concepts in it. They asked Blake Bortles to throw a lot of deep routes. You know, Johnny Manziel just lets it fly. You know, a lot of people describe him as a gunslinger. But look at his that A&M offense does a lot of short passes, screen passes. Doesn't really do much in medium distance. But so, you know, they're all different. So, but if you look at one number that stands out, that's the number for Teddy Bridgewater in the screen column, the screen row. Low percentage of screen passes. Didn't throw a lot of screen passes. Threw a lot of short passes. Quite a bit of, 6 to 10 yard passes. Barely threw anything downfield, but it's the kind of thing you expect from a West Coast offense. West Coast offense is kind of a dink and dunk, and that was prevalent in the Super Bowl. You know, it was a lot of run. It was a lot of clock management, a lot of winning the time of possession battle, and just managing the game. You're not asking the quarterback to consistently throw for 300 yards a game. You don't have to. When you have a running game that's working, when you're keeping the opponent off the field, if that wins you games, it wins you games. It was very effective. So that's basically the table here. So basically, the table I just showed you guys was, where the quarterbacks threw the ball, right? That's basically where the quarterbacks threw the ball. Now, what I'm about to show you right now, and now to all of you watching this video, I'm about to show you here how accurate they were when throwing to this area of the field. So here you go. Look at these numbers. Although Teddy Bridgewater barely threw any screen passes, of course he's gonna hit them all. But look at the accuracy numbers. With Teddy and compare them to the other three. Derek Carr, he really didn't do much. He had the lowest completion percentage of the four, throwing short passes. And he also had the lowest completion percentage throwing the deep ball. So there's a little bit of skepticism there. Now, Blake Bortles was pretty average, I would say. He was he ranked out okay. He's able to throw the ball. Blake Bortles has been asked to throw the ball deep but he was very accurate. Look at his completion percentage, throwing the ball 20-plus yards. He's the best. He's one of the better deep throwers. Of the four that threw, of the four that targeted through balls that deep. He's also a great medium range thrower. So Blake Bortles has a decent arm. Johnny Manziel, he needs to work on his intermediate game. He sometimes likes to drill it. Sometimes a little. He's sometimes inaccurate with some of those timing routes. But in his offense, they ran a lot of short passes. A lot of screens, a lot of tunnel screens, a lot of bubble screens, a lot of quick slants, a lot of hitches, a lot of out routes, a lot of in routes, a lot of run after the catch type routes and such. So, but if you just look at the chart, the clear winner is Teddy Bridgewater. He was just flat out accurate, no matter where he threw the ball. Other than the deep ball where he needs to work on, but 51% from throwing deep is pretty average. It's not really terrible. It's not really bad. I don't know. One thing I always notice is that arm strength. So after looking at this, Teddy Bridgewater might not have the strongest arm, but it's good enough. And I think arm strength really gets you into trouble. And that really gets a lot of people into trouble because it's the first thing that jumps out on tape. It's the first thing that looks sexy, but it's not everything. Plus, you look at the talent that he had around him. Yes, he had some good skill players around him, but aside from that, he didn't have guys. He didn't sit behind a huge line. He didn't. His wide receivers were good, but they're not like Marquise Lee or Robert Woods good. But Teddy Bridgewater's he's very intelligent at what he does. And while a lot of people have criticized Johnny Manziel, he does throw the deep ball pretty well. So, like I said, the only thing he had guys like Mike Evans to throw the ball to. So, I don't know. We'll see. So I don't know. We'll see. My biggest concern about Johnny Manziel is his while his playmaking looks good in college, that his kind of escapability might not necessarily work in the NFL. Just saying. So that's the second thing that he looked at. And the third thing that he looked at is how do these guys do under pressure? And, in the NFL, you have to really the quarterbacks are pressured a lot more. Those guys, the guys that are rushing towards the quarterback are just giants. They're monsters. You don't believe me? Look at Seattle. You have to play Seattle. You got to deal with guys like those guys coming at you. That line has to protect you. So, looking at these four, here are the numbers that he came up for the quarterbacks under pressure and against the blitz. So here you go. Basically, the first thing that jumps out at you when you look at this board is, Derek Carr really doesn't do very well. He's 50. His completion percentage under pressure is 50%, and according to this, it's worst among the top 8. So he doesn't feel the pressure, or he doesn't feel the pressure and doesn't respond well to blitzes, and that's a problem. And that's something to be concerned about, because in the NFL, blitzes can come from anywhere, and a lot of defensive coordinators are known to disguise their coverages a lot, and they especially fool young quarterbacks if they're not prepared. The biggest evidence is Case Keenum. You know, he was having trouble recognizing the blitz. So it's something that he needs to work on as well. But you know, the two guys that have the most success under pressure that I'm looking at these numbers is Teddy Bridgewater and Blake Bortles. Both of these guys have about a 63% completion percentage they complete 63% of their passes under pressure. And Teddy Bridgewater sees the blitz better than any of these guys. Almost equal. His completion percentage is just about equal when there's no pressure. The numbers you have on the chart here, you know, as you can see, it says 77% completion percentage under pressure and a 78% completion percentage when there's no pressure, when there's no blitz coming at him. And then you look at Johnny Manziel's numbers, you know, pretty average, as you would expect a top college quarterback to be. You know, it's when under pressure about 60%, no pressure 78% when he has all the time in the world, 68% when the blitz is coming, and when there's no blitz 78%. You know, typical. So, but like I said, when you're given all the time in the world, you better complete your passes. But the biggest challenge for a lot of young guys when they enter the league, how do they handle the blitz? And that's very, very important. And finally, he did a stat that really interested me. He did a stat where it basically took the completion percentages of these guys and they took away and basically put them in an average system. So it's like, what would happen if we put these guys in an average system where there's nothing exotic, it's just a standard offensive system, right? So, and this really interested me because when I looked at these numbers at the first time, I looked at this and I said, wait a minute, what does it mean when they say an average system? And then I realized, and then when I looked at, and you know, when I read this article more than once, I noticed that it said that it says right here in the article, quote, this is imperfect, but it gives you a feel of how the system's helped or harmed them. So basically, how would Derek Carr perform if he was in a system outside of what he was given at Fresno State? You know what I mean? Like, what if you put him in an actual NFL offense? So, for those of you that are watching the video, here it is. You can clearly see Teddy, Bridgewater, Bortles, and Manziel's system didn't really have too much of an effect. Didn't have too much of an effect on their productivity. You know, based on the math that this guy did, none of them really played in a system that kind of gave them numbers, that kind of inflated their numbers. You know, because basically they took out plays where they took like yards after catch completely out of the equation. So that's basically what they're going at. Basically, Um, so basically, you look at this, and Derek Carr down here in red is what should really concern you, because according to this, Derek Carr would lose 3.5% off of his completion percent. That's what this means. The negative means he would lose 3.5% of his completion percentage for the season because of his system. Why? Because he threw a ton of screen passes in his offense. You take away those kinds of screen passes, and those screen passes are like 95%, 95 to 99% completion every time. And and let's say you increase the number of, say, medium to deep passes that he would throw. That's the kind of effect that it would have on Derek Carr's completion percentage. Basically, his completion percentage would go from 74 to about 70. While it might not seem like a big drop, trust me, for a quarterback's accuracy, that's actually a lot more. That's actually a bigger gap than one might think. So you look at this. So based on these numbers from this article, seems to me Teddy Bridgewater seems to be the guy to really take a chance on, you know? So basically this article kind of supports the standpoint that I've always had about Teddy Bridgewater, that he is the best quarterback in this class. No matter what everyone raves about Johnny Manziel and his playmaking ability, or Blake Bortles and his size, you know, he's got a pretty good arm himself, and he's tall, he's big, he's athletic, he's built. But he's no Andrew Luck. He's no Andrew Luck. The closest guy I would say to a number one pick in terms of quarterbacks is Teddy Bridgewater. If I were the Texans and I had to take a quarterback, number one, take Teddy. If the only option is quarterback, if the only option we have at that number one pick is quarterback, or if that's what the owner and coach are thinking about, take Teddy Bridgewater. Take Teddy Bridgewater. If you're going to take a quarterback. If you're not going to take a quarterback, if the owner and coach are thinking we'll get a quarterback later, I stick with my original assumption of taking Jadeveon Clowney number one overall and putting him beside J.J. Watt, let Romeo Crennel have his fun with those two guys, and I'm sure he will. He'll find a way to put both of them in a position to succeed. You know, and I'm sure he'll find a lot of different things for those two guys so that they both can go out there and produce and apply continuous pressure on opposing quarterbacks. But that's the one thing I wanted to get through in this episode, guys. So again, we're at the end. We're at the beginning of another off season. Long ways to go before the draft, and you can be sure I will be here covering the Houston Texans as we enter, you know, the off season. So any kind of moves in free agency, coaching and staffing changes, draft stories, you know, all that good fun stuff. I will be here covering all of that for you guys. Stay tuned for more videos and more Houston Texans coverage. And I'll be sure to keep you guys. Also, if you haven't noticed, if you guys don't know, a new Facebook. I have created a Facebook page, and I'm in the process of creating a blog page for this channel and for this series, where I'll be putting. I'll be starting writing my own articles about certain topics about the Houston Texans. So that'll be something to look forward to. And as soon as I get that finalized, I'll be sure to share the details with all of you. Again, thank you guys so much Thank you guys so much. I appreciate any comments. Who do you think should be taken number 1 overall? If you have an opinion on who should be taken number 1 overall, should it be a quarterback, or should it be a guy like Jadeveon Clowney or Anthony Barr? Who do you want? Tell me in the comment section. I'll see what. I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to say. Tune in to more episodes of Bulls on Parade Talk. Thank you for tuning into this latest episode. I'm your host, Joshua Steins, signing off.